If you like what you're hearing, put your money where your media is by supporting ad-free independent podcasts like this one. Go to lauraflanders.com/membership, and thank you. Hi, I'm Laura Flanders, and this is The Laura Flanders Show, the TV and radio program that seeks to raise radical spirits by interviewing forward-thinking people with real models of shifting power from the few to the many in the worlds of arts, entrepreneurship, and politics. Pre-industrial people, post-industrial economics, and puppies. This week on The Laura Flanders Show, I talk with Riane Eisler on the 30th anniversary of her classic book, The Chalice and the Blade, Our History, Our Future. Right now, it's in its 57th printing. What will it take for societies to go from domination to partnership, a way of life some of our ancestors knew? We better find out fast before we cross the threshold to destruction. All that and a few thoughts from me on the FCC's plans for media monopoly and the lawsuit I really want for Christmas. It's all coming up on The Laura Flanders Show, the place where the people who say it can't be done take a back seat to the people who are doing it. Welcome.
I was born in Europe, in Vienna, at a time, of massive social regression to what I call a domination system. It was the rise to power of the Nazis, first in Germany and then in my native Austria. So from one day to the next, my whole world collapsed, and my parents and I, we became hunted with license to kill. And it was only by a hair's breadth. We were actually one of the last ships to Cuba, before one that was turned back to St. Louis. That ship was not permitted to land anywhere. It had to go back to Europe. And of course, many of the people on board were murdered by the Nazis, as happened to most of my family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins.
That's just a little bit of the history of Riane Eisler, today's guest. Riane, watching that video, I'm struck that not everybody with your experience would have dedicated themselves to fighting domination. A lot of people determined that they're going to dominate when they've been through something like that. What do you think determined your course of interest and curiosity and work?
Well, I think that it wasn't just one factor. It never is. But for me, always having been a very curious child, it was very shocking.
So where did you begin? Because your research takes you way back into history.
You know, it's very strange, Laura, but my life is really like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle coming together. I had no idea when I became, as a kind of going crazy housewife in the suburbs of Los Angeles, the fact that I became so interested in prehistoric so-called mystery cults, that would be an avenue for me to really look at our prehistory, try to understand how come there were all of these powerful female deities. Mm-hmm. What did that mean in terms, because art reflects and perpetuates social systems. Of course, my first job out of school, before I went back to law school, was with the Systems Development Corporation. Mm-hmm. And so I learned about systems analysis before anybody had a clue about what that meant. Mm-hmm. What it means is that you have to look at the whole picture, and that really the parts of a picture are what you have to understand, how they interconnect and mutually support each other.
And what did you learn that was a departure from the traditional analysis of what cultures, of the cultures that you were studying?
Well, I learned that underlying our conventional system of classifications, right-left, religious-secular, Eastern-Western, Northern-Southern, are really two configurations. And the only way you can see these is if, as I did in this very systemic study of society, you take into account parts of the picture that are left out of the usual social analyses. And by that I mean very specifically the situation of the majority of humanity, women and children. But I also, as I said, I went into a database that includes prehistory, and so it became clear to me that there were some patterns that kept repeating themselves historically and cross-culturally. There were no names for them. I called one, therefore, for obvious reasons, the domination system, because it's really based on people thinking there are only two alternatives. You either dominate or you're dominated. And I called the other one the partnership system. And of course, no society is a pure partnership or domination system, but depending on the degree of orientation, like the regression to domination that I was born into, was a pure domination system. And you have to understand how that could happen in this, quote, civilized nation. You also have to understand that the family in Germany was really the origin of the identification with the strong person, of where caring and coercion is a confluence between them.
So the family becomes one of the cornerstones by which you analyze systems.
Absolutely.
We'll get to that. But before we do, I want you to go back to the history for just a minute, because it was so fascinating. You say that we had 30,000 years of partnership, and you look at communities or societies like Crete or Mycenae, and you see this partnership. Some people have talked about matriarchy. You don't.
It's fascinating how our language keeps us trapped. And really linguistic psychologists have remarked that categories, and social categories or categories, channel our thinking. So what is really matriarchy and patriarchy? They're two sides of a domination coin. Neither is really the alternative. A partnership is the alternative.
So what did you see that made you think that those 30,000 years were engaged in partnership? And then, of course, the big question, what the heck happened to change things?
Well, I deal with all of that at some length in The Chalice and the Blade, in Sacred Pleasure, etc. But, I want to say something. Actually, it was millennia where partnership was more the norm. And my colleague, Douglas Fry, who is the expert, he's done a couple of Oxford University books on the subject, he studied foraging societies. And the story we've been told is all crazy, because if you look at contemporary foraging societies, plus the evidence that we have, and you see it without the blinkers, you see that they were more partnership-oriented, and they were not warlike or male-dominated. Mm-hmm.
You, in The Chalice and the Blade, write that most of our most important innovations of so-called civilization actually date to that period, which also runs counter to our theories.
Well, of course. We're told... there's so many contradictory theories to explain, that is, to rationalize, justify the domination system we are trying to get out of. So much of modern history, especially in the West, despite all of our problems and domination heritage, has been challenging one tradition of domination after another. It's a unified movement if you look at it through those lenses. But the thing is that we don't do that. Mm-hmm. And we have this very fragmented view of history.
Human evolution is at a crossroads, says our guest, celebrated author and Center for Partnership Studies president, Dr. Riane Eisler. Teetering on a brink, society has to decide, do we go on seeking domination or choose to practice more collaboration? A partnership society offers us a viable way forward, she says, and there's plenty of history we can tap into.
It's a matter of time before justice will come. It's a matter of time, yeah, before all wars will be done. It's a matter of time before wrongs will be righted. It's a matter of time, yeah, before all people will be united. Let's not wait any longer, yeah.
That was Matter of Time by Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings from Jones's album Soul of a Woman on Daptone Records. This show is funded and made possible by you lovely souls out there listening on Pacifica affiliate radio stations via podcast or watching the program on non-commercial media like Free Speech TV, Link TV, or CUNY TV in the New York area. Soon we'll be kicking off our new Patreon campaign, where you can get involved at 5 levels from Rebel to Revolutionary for as little as $2 a month. Sign up for our mailing list at lauraflanders.com to get more information and be the first out of the gate. And if you're already a media-supporting Rebel, don't need an incentive to support, make a year-end donation right there at the site. Later in the show, I have a few things to say about why the public media fight just got a whole lot hotter. But first, think that what happens in the home, especially as it pertains to gender, stays in the home? Think again. Here's the Feminist Press's 2017 Feminist Power Award winner, Riane Eisler. Coming to the present, you predicted the Trump election long before it happened. How so?
In 2007, just to give you one example, I wrote an op-ed for Alternet. And I said in that, hey, there's an issue that we have given away. Family, values, and morality. And it is really what's making it possible for this regression, which already, was Trump is just sort of, the culmination of decades. The Rightist Fundamentalist Alliance, which came together really to defeat the Equal Rights Amendment, spent enormous resources, time, effort on changing the normative ideal for families. So in that op-ed I wrote that in 1992, polls showed that if you asked a sample of Americans, do you agree that the father is the master of the house? At that time, 42% said yes. By 2004, it had increased to 52%.
Even as more families had no male head.
Well, it doesn't really matter. It's a normative ideal.
Concept.
It's what we're taught we should be. What is traditional family? Traditional family is a code word, isn't it? For a rigidly male-dominated, authoritarian, highly punitive family where children learn 2 lessons. One is that you better obey orders no matter how unjust, because it's painful not to, very painful. And 2, they learn to equate difference, beginning with the difference between male and female, with superiority, inferiority, dominating or being dominated, being served and serving, and then that generalizes itself. We know from neuroscience, that the brain is formed to such a large extent in those early years. It manifests itself in racism, anti-Semitism, but it's Shiite, against Sunni, it's Muslim against Buddhist, it's wherever. Okay, and
the family is just one of your 4 cornerstones.
Absolutely.
So talk about some of the others.
Well,
you mentioned gender.
Gender certainly is very, very important. Economics, but I look at economics from a very different perspective than I think we've got to get out of this old debate of capitalism versus socialism. Look, they came out of the 1700s, the 1800s. It was early industrial times. We're in the 21st century post-industrial age.
I say they're Einsteinian theories and we need quantum.
Absolutely. And they both really, for both...
Newtonian and Einsteinian, I guess.
Yeah, well, for both Smith and Marx, nature was there to be exploited, and so was the women's work of caring for people starting in early childhood. This is totally dysfunctional, has caused enormous damage to people, to nature, but right now it's impossible because we really need to invest in human capacity development. And we know again from neuroscience that the quality of care that children receive early on is foundational.
So how would this change? And we've talked on this program before about how we treasure what we measure.
Yes.
You say we should measure some different things. Care would be a nice thing to measure, and actually pay for it, wouldn't it?
Yes, well, that's the whole premise of my book, The Real Wealth of Nations. Not the whole premise, because, it analyzes, but one of the basic premises is that we've been operating with a partial economic map that really ignores, as part of what is the domain of economics, the three life-sustaining sectors: the natural economy, the volunteer economy, and the household economy. So we developed, to answer your question about metrics, new measures that are different not only from GDP, but from most GDP alternatives. Because, for one thing, they do show the enormous economic value of the work of caring in homes, not only in the market where it's, of course, look, as if women are devalued, this is systems analysis, then anything associated stereotypically with being a woman, with femininity, with, quote, softness, is devalued, whoever is doing it. So you can't realistically expect caring policies, whether it's caring for nature or caring for people. And so we're really talking about a whole different approach, what I call partnerism, or a caring economics.
And language is the last part.
Well, this is where you come in, because really the narratives, especially the narratives about our past, our present, and the possibilities for our future, are so screwed up. People say, oh, capitalism is the answer, and others say, well, socialism is the answer. Well, look at the two mass applications of socialism in China and in the former Soviet Union. A disaster. Why? Because you cannot understand or change economics without understanding and changing. If it is one orienting, obviously, as it was in both these places, to the domination side, economics will perpetuate that. So whether it's a feudal lord or a king or a pasha or, quote, trickle-down economics, which is dominator economics.
This is the Laura Flanders Show. I'm Laura. My guest, Riane Eisler, whose classic book, The Chalice and the Blade, Our History, Our Future, is right now in its 57th printing, is also the author of The Real Wealth of Nations, in which she argues that economists who overlook household labor are missing a big way to grow the economy.
We break it out, they chasing our conscience elevated. They know they love to hate us, but his kingdom come, our freedom won. We live in revelations. We come from cross of chosen. Our truth we are exposing. Waiting for that if they know good thing he is withholding. Blessings are upon us even though they raped and sold us. Got a pocket full of promise. Living life just like it's golden, boy. 1,000 years, say 1,000 years. Said we will not all sleep, but we will always change. All his kids, say all his kids. The last shall be first, and this prophecy fulfilled. Cause if this love is life, then this life is free. Take this ride, a life with speed.
That was Riding for 1,000 Years by Surreal. This is the Laura Flanders Show, a TV show, radio show, and this podcast. You can watch the program at our website, where you'll find footage of my guest Riane Eisler's childhood in World War II Germany, the childhood which laid the groundwork for her fascination with partnership as opposed to domination-based societies. Eisler is the president of the Center for Partnership Studies, about which you can also find out more at our website. That's lauraflanders.com. While we're at it, this show wouldn't be possible without your partnership. Become a member today by making a one-time donation or sustain our work into the future with an ongoing monthly contribution. Coming up just after this, I'll tell you what I really want these holidays. It's not a new suit, but the word suit's involved in it. My guest, Riane Eisler, has been at it for 30 years, pioneering partnership studies and making the case that it is not men or women, it's caring that has to be at the center of our economy and our society. The term caring economy is getting increased attention today, but how close are we really to upending domination economics and replacing it with something better? Not very close, says Eisler, but closer. You talk about a revolution of caring.
Yes, a caring revolution.
We don't have a whole lot more time, but just briefly, where do you see we are along the way towards that?
We are taking baby steps, but we are taking them. And see, if you look at history really as not as linear, but as a spiral with dips, as I said, all the progressive social movements, whether it's the so-called rights of man or feminism or civil rights, have challenged traditions of domination. But we're at a place where caring is beginning, and we've had something to do with that at the Center for Partnership Studies with our Caring Economy campaign. It's at least being talked about, and there is a push, and this is a question of tactics, because the strategy is obviously a cultural transformation, paying attention to these 4 cornerstones. But a very important tactic is enacting laws that support care work, like the Nordic nations have. Invest in our people and invest in nature, paid parental leave, early childhood education. We have the highest child poverty rate in this country and invest the least in our children. This is not coincidental.
So I can see reasons for hope and optimism in many of your areas of cornerstones. I think the conversation around transgender and trans identities is a positive move. The discussion around intersectionality is, to answer your question, your very first answer, things are complicated. No identity is unilateral, as it were. In the area of narratives and language, I see concentration, domination, and sort of megaphone making of meaning.
And also a complete fragmentation of consciousness. I mean, all of these wonderful technologies we have, they are distractions, and I worry about what's happening to young people who so desperately want a new way of being, not just thinking.
And they're spending their days rating each other and giving each other thumbs up and thumbs down.
But the thing about it is this, look, determination, persistence, and language. I think for people who have really understood the configurations of the partnership and domination systems, it's been life-changing. If we can change the language to start talking about dismantling our domination heritage, and if we understand the 4 cornerstones we have to work on for partnership, and like the regressives, have an integrated progressive agenda that doesn't just try to dismantle the top.
It's great talking to you, Riane. I have one last question, and maybe it's a big one, but when I read Chalice and the Blade, which I encourage everybody to read, there is an explanation. You do talk about how this transition happened, and you point the finger of blame at nomadic tribes that came and disrupted societies of partnership. I wonder about that. Isn't it always an outsider who comes in and wrecks our beautiful golden age? Are you sure that's what happened, or was there something in us? Because I feel there is a tendency in each of us also. I'm training a puppy right now. I'm deeply into domination. But seriously, is it outside influence that wrecks the golden age, or is it something in us?
Well, let's start with your puppy. As adorable as puppies are, we are not puppies.
Correct.
And we are really not as completely dependent on, once we grow up, for our food, for our shelter. So, yes, you're in a position where, that's it. But look, we can. I've been writing a new book, drawing also from how our brains develop, drawing from neuroscience, differently in partnership and domination-oriented environments. And we have, by the grace of evolution, we humans have enormous capacities for consciousness, for caring, for creativity. But we also have the capacities for insensitivity, for cruelty, and for destructiveness. The issue, and it's very simple in a way, and that was what I sought to understand. I mean, we've come full circle, in a sense, from the video, you know, about my early life. What are the conditions that support the expression of either one of these two bundles? Not perfect, but... So I don't agree that there's something in us. I think that actually our most felt human need is for caring connection.
So why so much dominance?
Well, we've inherited this, and it's been going for about, 3,000 some years, 5,000 some years in some areas. It takes time, because once a system is established, you get systems self-maintenance. But our time, I said earlier that the shift, the last 300 years of the shift from an agrarian to an industrial age, were a time where a lot of the givens of the domination system, I mean, look at the European Middle Ages. I mean, my God, it looked like the Taliban, right? Inquisition, crusades, witch burnings. I mean, no rights, human rights. I mean, what? We now, in this time of the shift, and it's a rapid shift from the industrial to the post-industrial age, yes, it's a crisis. Of course, automation, robotics, artificial intelligence, that's why we need a completely different economic system, partnerism. But we also have the opportunity for fundamental change, including redefining what is and is not productive work.
That was Riane Eisler, author of The Chalice and the Blade, Our History, Our Future, a groundbreaking book now in its 30th anniversary year. She's also founder of the Center for Partnership Studies. You can watch our conversation and learn more about Eisler at our website. Find the schedule at lauraflanders.com/watch. Next, the F word, this week's commentary on the FCC, media monopoly, and what I really want for Christmas. Holiday shopping on your mind? Gift subscriptions to newspapers and magazines were big last year. Subscriptions to the New York Times and the Washington Post spiked soon after the election as the penny seemed to drop that without an informed electorate, we have a pretty dodgy democracy. A year on, American democracy is in way more trouble than a few gift subs can fix. While the conventional wisdom has had it that the Trump White House has had a hard time getting much done, the Federal Communications Commission has been doing a lot, none of it good for public decision-making, as in democracy, the system with the people, the demos, the debate. Historically, the mission of the FCC has been to regulate the public airwaves for the sake of our democracy by promoting localism, competition, and diversity. Trump's communications chair, Ajit Pai, is against all of that. Pai, a former staffer to Jeff Sessions, leads the commission's Republican majority in virtual lockstep. He's made it more than clear that he plans to reverse net neutrality rules. That would make it legal for big cable providers to privilege some content over others, their own, for example, over independents like us. Pai's comfortable with monopolies of opinion and ownership, too. If the FCC goes ahead and repeals the last limits on how many stations a single entity can own, that will do horrible things to your phone bill, but the impact on democracy will be even worse. Sinclair Broadcasting, for example. If that company gets to buy Tribune, they'll have stations that reach 3/4 of the U.S. population with one agenda, Trump's. Sinclair's hired former Trump advisors to record daily commentaries, which all the local stations are forced to air under a must-carry rule that is strictly enforced. Many stations, one voice. It's time we stopped fiddling with the FCC. What do I really want for Christmas? A few huge, sexy, monopoly-busting, local media funding antitrust lawsuits. Big Cable's not covering the FCC struggle much, but you can cast your vote by signing a petition or getting involved at one of many sites, for example, freepress.net. Thanks. This show is produced by yours truly, with Monica Mohapatra, Natasha Elena Ullman, Jeannie Hopper, Danica D'Souza, Emily Allen, Charlotte Prager, and Diego Romero Montiel. I like to hear what you think, so write to me. That's Laura, Laura, at lauraflanders.com. I do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. The program's made possible by the Novo Foundation and listeners like you. Become a member today. Thanks for your ongoing support. We couldn't do it without you. Stay kind, stay curious. Till the next time, I'm Laura Flanders.